KIIT University, Maharaja Agrisan, nice. SRM, National Institute of Technology, Kurukshetra, IIITN, YMCA Faridabad. We have students from all around India. That's great. Jamia Hamdard, Bangalore Institute of Technology. That is great. That is great. So I'll start with the presentation now. Hacktoberfest 2020, open source for beginners. Oh, we have someone from Maharashtra too. So is my screen visible to everyone? Deepika, can you let me know if my screen is visible? If my screen is visible?
Yes, Aksham, it is visible.
Okay, great. So we will start with the session. So welcome everyone. This is a session for open source for beginners, Hacktoberfest. As you all know, October has started and Hacktoberfest, the event of Hacktoberfest has begun. So about me, I'm Saksham Arora. As I already told, I'm from Maharaja Agrisan. I'm pursuing information technology. I'm a Python developer, and I started programming in Python at the end of second semester last year, for the end of first year. So even though I wrote my first Hello World code in C++ back in 11th class, I really started coding heavily at the end of second semester. So I was also selected for Google Summer of Code 2020 program under Python Software Foundation. I was accepted as a student developer in Intel's machine learning based open source project DFFML, where I worked on image processing and computer vision. I was also a project mentor for a Flutter based project in Girl Script Summer of Code, this year's edition of Girl Script Summer of Code. My main interests are in artificial intelligence field. So the agenda for today. So first we'll go through what is Hacktoberfest and open source. As many of you won't know what we are here for exactly. Many of you are newbies, so we'll start with that, and then we'll move on to why is open source software important. And then we'll go into Git and GitHub and all the technicalities, and then we'll create a pull request. After that, we'll discuss about other open source things like how can you become an active open source contributor, and what is GSOC and how you can crack GSOC. And that at the end, we'll have a doubt session. So what exactly is Hacktoberfest? Hacktoberfest is a month-long celebration of open source software, which is run by DigitalOcean. The CEO of DigitalOcean is Yancey Spruill, and I'll show you a video of him welcoming you all to this great event. It is open for everyone, and 4 to 5 quality pull requests must be submitted to public GitHub repositories. And this will result in you getting some great swags and t-shirts and everything. Last year I did this and I got great swags and and a very nice t-shirt. So steps to registers are only two. You just need a GitHub account, which is free to create, and you need to register with your GitHub ID at the Hacktoberfest official website. So we'll watch a video by Yancey Spruill, the CEO of DigitalOcean, which is the company which runs the Hacktoberfest event. Oh, it's not, I don't think it's. Is it audible? No, it's audible.
And I'd like to welcome you to the 7th annual Hacktoberfest. Hacktoberfest is a month-long celebration of open source software for all 31 days in October. And in this event, this month-long event, we bring together over 100,000 people to contribute to the betterment of open source software. At this annual event, we have open source projects where developers become contributors, students and early learners, learn more and build their passion and experience. And we gather people together online. Historically, we've done offline, but in 2020, I suspect will be predominantly online. But we bring people together from over 150 countries throughout the world. At DigitalOcean, one of our core values is around community. And a pillar of the language of that value is we say, our community is bigger than just us. And I can find no better representation of our investment and our passion for fostering the global community of developers and entrepreneurs than Hacktoberfest. It's an important element for us because it brings so many people together in this very global way for 31 days, and it generates so much excitement and passion around one of our core value propositions as a business, which is around open source. And what we believe happens during the month of Hacktoberfest, not only do we bring people together, but we help people learn and we help people grow. And that's a fundamental tenet of what we're all about at DigitalOcean in terms of enabling global entrepreneurs and developers to test ideas, build their businesses, and chase their dreams. So what we hope that you'll gain is that you'll participate, you'll learn a little bit more, you'll join a project, you'll meet new people, and you'll help make open source software better for the legions of people who use it today and well into the future. So with that, I can't wait to see you all and what you will come up with this year at Hacktoberfest. And remember that for those projects that are accepted, you get the famous DigitalOcean Hacktoberfest t-shirt, a prize well worth earning during the month of October. So until then, be well, and we'll see you in October.
That was a great message by Ansi Spruill. So now, what is open source? As he must have told you, so it is something people can modify and share because it is publicly accessible, right? Like there are two kinds of software. One is open source software and the other is proprietary software or closed source software. This type of software cannot be modified by everyone and is like we need to pay to use proprietary software. But open source is open to use for everyone. Its source code is available online and is also free to download. The open source software community encourages open collaboration between everyone around the world. It is meant to be a collaborative effort where programmers improve upon the source code and share the changes with the community. Almost every big project that is open source have a community of programmers who work on that big project regularly to keep it updated. A lot of you don't know, maybe you know or you don't know, a lot of big tech companies make use of open source software in their products, and some others even have developers create open source software for their needs. So many of you might be knowing this, as many of you have tried your hand in web development, HTML, CSS, JavaScript. So almost all of them, there are in JavaScript there are these frameworks. Among those frameworks, top three are like React, Angular, and Vue. All of them are open source. You can view all of their code on GitHub online, and you can even give new feature updates, propose new feature updates, and make pull requests and write code for them. And if it is a good code, they'll accept it, and your new feature will be implemented in that framework. It is just like a community. So why is open source software important? Many people ask me, like, why do you contribute to open source? What do you get out of it? So the most important thing is that many open source software are better than the proprietary software due to the fact that more perspectives make better software. It is also important in building a sustainable project, as more people will equate to more ideas, features, and a better maintenance of the project in the long run. Like also open source software are free. It is a great alternative to the proprietary software which you need to pay to use for. There are many other pros, some of them like personal benefits. Like open source softwares are driven by altruism and the desire to help others. That's why they are doing open source contribution. Community recognition. When working on or running open source projects, you can get recognition from the developer community in a number of ways, such as creating a great GitHub profile, which many of you are already doing and some of you might want to do in the future, and participating, of course, in events like Hacktoberfest and getting awesome t-shirts and swags. Also, there is another pro, self-advertising. Like if you open a company, like for example, you open a company and actively participate in the open source community, you can earn a great reputation, just like Google has done, Facebook has done. Facebook has their many projects like PyTorch, and a lot of them Torch Vision. Google have a very big number of projects open source, and they also run Google Summer of Code, as you all know. This way, like it will be easier for you. It will be very easier for you if you have if there is a company, and it will be very easier for you for self advertising. There is a sense of value here. Like engaging in open source development will make your work meaningful. You'll do meaningful work, you'll see what the world is doing, what the world is in need of. You'll do meaningful work and you will grow to love coding. Software quality, security, and customization. As I said, more perspectives make better software. A piece of software created by a team of developers can be of lower quality, and one which is developed by thousands and thousands of developers from all over the world with experiences in different technologies will make better projects. This is one of my favorite slides by Philippe Kahn. The power of open source is the power of the people. The people rule it. Okay, so as now the introduction to open source has finished, and let's jump into what we're here for, the technicalities and the business what we're here for. So how to get started with open source, right? First, you need to know what is Git version control and GitHub. Many of you know, but some of you won't know. So that's why I'm here telling you what it is. Git is a free open source distributed version control system. It helps you keep tracks of projects and your repositories and files as they change over time. Now, I said open source distributed version control. Now, what is version control system? As you're seeing on the screen, a version control system is a system that records changes to a file or set of files over time, so that you can recall specific versions later. Like if you are adding a new feature and you don't like it, or you weren't able to complete it, or you found a better way to do it, so you can revert back to your previous version, which works perfectly, and implement your new way. Now, what is GitHub? GitHub is simply a Git repository hosting website which provides a web-based graphical user interface. It is one of the world's largest coding community also, and Hacktoberfest runs on this very platform. So how does Git and GitHub work? There are some important terminology that one should know when learning Git and GitHub, so that it makes your task easier. Because Git and GitHub are these version control systems are Git is a version control system, and it is very hard to understand if you're new to developing. So let's start with the important terminologies. Snapshots. So snapshots are how Git keeps track of your code and how your file looks at a given point of time. Now with this one can go back to any snapshot or version of the project, as I was saying earlier. Next comes commits. Commits are how you save your snapshot or version of files at a given point of time. Like if you want to create a snapshot, you will commit your files so that it can be saved somewhere. It can be saved. A commit contains three important things: information about how the files were changed, a reference to the previous commit, and a hash code. So what is repository? It is basically your project. It's a collection of all your files along with the history. That is, all the commits you made will live in here. So where these repositories are stored in your local machine, obviously at the first when you're creating these projects, and it can be hosted somewhere else too, like GitHub. Then comes branches, right? all commits in a Git repository live on a branch, live on some branch, because you need to go from different version to different version, right? The main branch of the repository is called the master branch for now, but starting from this month, I think I heard in the news that it will be called the main branch from now. So cloning is like just copying, like when you're on GitHub, you want to copy a repository to your local machine, you'll do cloning for that. And pulling is like if you already have your the project on your local machine and there is some changes on the GitHub hosted repository and you want to pull those changes down, that is where pulling comes to use. And pushing is just like if you have added more commits in your local machine, in your local Git, and you want to add them in your GitHub hosted repository, you'll just simply use the pushing feature in Git. So this is how Git works, right? I told you about branching, pushing, and pulling, right? So here from master, you want to fix a bug, right? But don't know that if fixing this bug will create other problems in the code. So you create a new branch different from master so that the code in the master does not spoil. And if you succeed in fixing the bug, you merge that code into your master. Now, what is merging? You'll ask, right? So merging is when you have done changes regarding a new feature or a new bug fix on a new branch, and you would want to merge those changes into your main branch. This is known as merging. Now, setting up Git is very easy. Most of you have already done it, but here it is for the newbies. If you're using Linux, there are many ways. You can visit the site I have linked here, git-scm.com/download/linux, and for Windows it is /download/win, and for Mac it is /download/mac. After downloading Git, you'll want to configure the Git for setting up of your commit. Like I told you here, like a commit contains three important things, right? Information about how the files were changed. This information contains your username, your email, and at the time of and at what time you were changing that commit, you were making that commit, right? So this is why you're setting this up so that every time you're committing, you don't have to enter everything, every piece of your information. Some of it is automated and you just have to add a password. Okay, so now you know the basics of version control, Git and GitHub. How do you implement it? These are some of the basic commands I use from day to day to maintain my repositories, my projects, or to contribute to open source, right? Many of you might know them, but some of you might not. So here they are. To clone a repository, you'll just use git clone and the URL to the repository. And we should just see it of hands on, right? So let me open a repository, right? I want to clone this repository, right? So first I'll fork it so that I want to make a pull request for it. I've already forked it, right? Here it is. We've already forked. So I'll want to download this. I'll want to clone this into my local machine. I'll just simply write git clone and paste the link I just copied. This will clone the repository into my local machine. I can just go into it and see everything. The same things are here and the same things are here. It got cloned. The next is git init. It is for when you're just starting the project, right? It is when you're creating the project from scratch. So you'll ask, how would I make a commit, right? You wouldn't know how to make a commit, right? It is very easy to create a commit. First, you need to clone a repo, and then you'll have to make some changes. Like, what if I made some changes here? So I'll add a random markdown file. And I'll just add something in the file, right? So you can see here it comes untracked because this is not in the GitHub hosted repository, and it is in the local machine. So we'll add it. You can see we'll add these changes first because we need to put them into a staging environment. The staging environment means that it is ready to be committed. So git add, what was the file's name? Hacktoberfest2020.md. As you can do git status to see what you have added, what you have deleted. So here have added a new file, Hacktoberfest2020, to the staging area. So if now I'm ready to commit this file, right? I'll commit this file. I've created this file, as you can see. These were the commits that were already made in the repository, as the repository contains all the commits of when you made it, where you made it. And this is a new file I created. This is a new commit I created, and it contains the new file Hacktoberfest 2020. Now done, everything's done. I've made the commit. What else? Oh, you have made the commit, but it is not hosted on your GitHub repository. It is on your local machine. For that is where git push comes in. It is to update the hosted repository with the new commits on your local machine. We'll just do git push. I'll add my username and my password. And I've added that commit. The commit has changed here. You can see here. I've added a new commit with a new file. I've added this file Hacktoberfest 2020, which contains this thing in the file. So okay, now you know how to create a commit, how to push those changes, how to push those changes to your GitHub hosted repository. Now you'll want to create a pull request for it. Now what is a pull request? Pull request let you tell others about the changes you've pushed to a GitHub repository. Once a pull request is sent, people in charge can review the changes and discuss potential modifications and even push follow-up commits if necessary. This is what collaboration is all about in the open source community. So to create a pull request is very simple. These are the steps. We have already forked the main repository. We have already cloned the forked repository. The forked repository is the one that is under my name here. This is the original repository. This is the forked repository. So we have already cloned the forked repository. Now, the next thing that is most people miss or sometimes forget is to add a remote. Now, what is a remote? Remote is just a link to just a URL to link different repositories together. So here I'll add a link to a remote link to the main repository here, so that I can create a pull request in this repository. So I'll copy the URL of this repository, and I'll add the remote for it. You can see I only have the origin remote. Origin is my own repository under my name Saksham Arora. I don't have the repository which I want to push the changes to. So I'll have to add the link to that repository, right?
Sorry for the interruption, Saksham. The font is not visible.
Okay. Just a second. Oh, Is it visible now? Is the text visible?
Yes, now it is clearly visible. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you for pointing that out. So I want to add this, right? I've added the remote link to that repository named upstream here. Why have I named it upstream? Because that is the norm here. You can name it anything you want, but naming the main repository as upstream is the norm in open source community. So now you can see I've added a remote. There it is, the upstream remote, and I can reference this remote using the remote's name upstream. So now I've added in this I've added the remote. That is the third step. Now you would have noticed that I didn't create a new branch. So when you're adding features, you need to create a new branch, as I told you, to not mix your stuff. But as I'm not, I must have forgotten to create a new branch. So we'll just go with that. I'll just compare with it. So as I've already posted my changes, I'll open the main repository. This is the main repository. I'll go to pull requests. I'll go to new pull request, and here it is, compare changes. Now it is asking for comparing changes between the base master branch and the same master branch here. But you want to compare changes with your own branch, which you forked. So here is the option for comparing changes with with your repository which you forked. So here is the base repository which you want to suggest the changes to, and here is my repository. These are the changes I've made. I've just made one change of a one-liner change, and I've added one file, Hacktoberfest 2020. Now I'll create this pull request, and uh, it'll give me the next prompt if I want to create a pull request. So by clicking this, I'll create a pull request. Here it is. I've created a new pull request here. It is that simple to create a pull request. And that's that for creating a pull request. Now you've created a pull request. Now, important tip, as I have already been stressing on that, always create a new branch to work on, and for new features and changes when collaborating on a repository. Avoid making changes directly to the master branch as much as possible. Now, why? I have already told you that if you're working on a new feature but weren't able to completely implement it, or maybe you found a better solution, now you have redundant code for that, and don't want to go through the hassle of changing that commit and reverting to the previous version. And now if you have a new branch, you'll just go back to the master branch and delete the new branch. It's that simple. Now next steps in becoming an active open source contributor, right? The process of open source collaboration and contribution is very intimidating for the newcomers, right? I was very intimidated last year when I tried to break into the open source community and collaboration. Most people have a lot of burning questions regarding this topic, like how do I find the project that suits me and inclines with my interest? What if I don't know anything about the project and I want to contribute to, and something goes awry, and many more such questions, right? So the thing is that you don't have to worry about that. Becoming an open source contributor is not only about writing meaningful code. If you're thinking that I don't know much about coding, I've just started out and I want to start contributing to open source, you don't have to worry that I won't be able to contribute to open source because I don't know how to write code that is great. There are a lot of other things besides code in a project that are mostly overlooked. For example, one of the main things beside the code is the documentation, right? You can start with fixing spelling mistakes and writing documentation where the parts of the project are undocumented. This will help you gain confidence in creating pull requests, pushing, pulling, and everything, and you will get more practice out of GitHub version control systems. It will also help you, like, so the main thing also is there that when you're reading the documentation, looking for spelling errors for the project you want to contribute to, you will go through the documentation and you'll understand what the code does, how the code does, which will help you later when you're solving complex issues and making complex pull requests. Like, you can also, there are many other things besides like becoming a documenter. Like, you can become a tester too. Like, you have found a project that piques your interest and their software works great in Mac and Linux but not in Windows, and you're one of the developers that use Windows for developing and writing code. So you can become a tester there and help them configure these issues and fix bugs that you come across when you're using that software in your Windows operating system. So you don't have to be afraid if you don't understand a part of the project because you want to contribute to. The open source community welcomes everyone with an open mind. Each repository and project have their communities that are mostly free for anyone to be a part of. Communicating with the project maintainers when you get stuck is something that is a part of the process. And as long as you're doing good work, they'll be happy and you will be happy. And the most important tip is you don't have to be afraid. You just have to start doing it. I was very afraid last year, and like for 1 month, I was just sitting there, how to contribute, how to contribute. When I got started, everything went smoothly. Everything went smoothly for me. Now there are other open source programs, right? That push the open source community and make open source community famous. The most popular one is, as you all know, Google Summer of Code. There is this new program Google released, Google Season of Docs, which is only for the sole purpose of documentation. There are other programs like Outreach Internships and Girl Script Summer of Code, which the Girl Script Summer of Code pushes for 50% of women participation. Now, how does these programs work, right? Let's take GSOC for example. I did Google Summer of Code this year. It is an annual program in which university students all around the globe contribute to open source during their break from school in the summer and code their summers away from April, May till August. So I'll show you how this all works. This program is also incentivized by providing $3,000 for the students that complete the program. So let's just go to Google Summer of Code's website to see what it is all about, right? So let's go to the 2020 edition of Google Summer of Code. Most of you have questions like, how can I be a part of part of this program, right? Just a second. Right, there are these organizations that have projects that students work on in this program, right? Like, what I did was I wanted to code in Python because I knew Python. I searched for Python here. This is what came up as the first result here, right? Python Software Foundation. This is an organization which develops Python and where many other things related to Python, right? These are the projects for 2019 here. So for 2020, we can go to the 2020 projects too. Like, I want programming languages here, right? These are the 2020 projects, right? Adding new checkers to CV binary tool, adding new machine learning models and operations in Python, animated icons and icon customization in Python, a lot there. There's my project image processing in DFML and computer vision and stuff. So this is how you go through this website and search for projects that pique your interest. Like what if there is someone who wants to contribute to Flutter and Dart, right? They know Flutter and Dart, then they want to contribute there. So Dart also is an organization that takes part actively in Google Summer of Code almost every year. So these were the projects for this year, right? Flutter testing sample app, platform channel sample app, generating Dart, and a lot more of these. You can just search and find the project that piques your interest and just go. You can, like, I can show you, like, you can go to the TensorFlow Lite one, right? TensorFlow takes part in Google Summer of Code here. So this was created by Amish Garg and his mentor was Paige Bailey, right? You can go to get the code and see what he did this summer, right? And get the idea of what kind of projects get selected and what kind of things are expected in this program here. New TensorFlow Lite support suite for Flutter, right? Key features: flexibility to use any TF-Lite model, similar structure as TensorFlow Lite Java API, and a lot more. You can see the object detection app here, which was created. Image classification on Flutter, text classification. This is how you want to browse through this website, Google Summer of Code's website, and find the project that best suits you and start contributing to it. If you're interested in taking part in this program next year. Now, these are some important resources I think would be helpful to everyone here. I'll make sure that these resources reach to you. These are very, very common resources. You can even find them, like Hacktoberfest website, correct? The Git documentation if you want to learn Git, the Summer of Code, Google Summer of Code, or learning resources. There are many important resources for learning you can find online. Now for the doubt session here, now you can ask your questions now. I'd like to hear what you want to ask me.
So I have a problem that actually क्या होता है कि मतलब PR रिसेप्ट नहीं होती और PR को देखता ही नहीं है कोई, तो तब क्या करें?
You were not audible. Can you repeat that again?
So I said that I have just created a pull request and just created an issue and posted that that this is an issue and this pull request can solve this issue and after that there is nothing. No one gonna see my pull request. So I'm talking about the repos which are not active. So could you please tell me how to do
Like,
something?
you can't do anything if the community is not active there and they are busy with their own stuff. If that does not mean that you didn't create a good code. If the community is active, they will always reply to you with what changes you have done, suggesting you other changes that you might have done or you should be doing, or if the pull request is not good or if the pull request is very great. So if the pull request is not being reviewed or not being looked upon by the maintainers, you should just look for a new repository to contribute to.
But it's kind of hard to.
Just want to interrupt. Could you please write your question in the chat? It would be more feasible, like others are also doing that.
Okay.
Okay. And Sakshan, could you please share the slide of the doubt session so that it looks good in the YouTube live as well?
Could you please repeat?
No, I was not talking to you. Okay, we have one more question from Astha. She said she is a beginner and will be entering college this year. So to start up with open source project, what are the skills that would be preferred for her to learn?
There is no preference here. what you want to learn is what you want to learn. If you're interested in machine learning, you should learn machine learning. If you're interested in web development, you should learn web development. There are all kinds of courses, all kinds of projects out there that will pique your interest and you'll want to contribute to. There is not a single path to this. Like one of my colleague, one person I know wanted to do web development and went into the web development area, and even did his Google Summer of Code related to the web development field with JavaScript, CSS, HTML, and went into machine learning field and did computer vision and image processing stuff in my Google Summer of Code period. So there is no preferred way. If you want to learn something, just learn it. If you don't feel like you are good at it, or you're getting your interests are diverting towards something else, learn that. But just be sure that what you learn is you're learning it very responsibly and nicely, because if you're just learning it for the sake of just coding and everything, then that won't work. You'll want to be completely into that.
We have another question from Lokesh. How can I read a new code? Like when I try to help someone, I am mostly not able to understand the code.
Yes, so that is where what I was talking about with the documentation and stuff, right? Like you first have to read through the documentation. Many of the things are already explained in the documentation. If you don't understand some parts of the documentation, you can reach out to the community and the project maintainers to ask them how this stuff is working, and how can I help with this issue or that issue. Do you understand? Is that clear, Lokesh?
Lokesh, you can write yes or no in the chat. Yes, he says it is clear.
Great.
We have one more question from Taksh. How to get a mentor for a specific repo when a person starts contributing to the repo? Shall I
How
repeat
to
the
get a
question?
mentor? Can you be a little more? No. I want to ask how to get a mentor for specific repository. Like, can you be more specific with the question in terms of what you need? You want to get a mentor. You can type that in the chat.
Also, Saksham, there is a question on the YouTube live chat. Aniket wants to know that he is totally a beginner. So, what he should focus on, Linux or Windows? Which will be easier for a beginner?
So for a beginner, it depends on your preference, right? If you want to try Linux, you should go and try Linux, because most of the developing community uses Linux and Mac, because Windows is not a great operating system as compared to Linux and Mac for developing software and writing code. So if you want to try out Linux, then sure, go ahead and try out Linux. But if you want to stay at Windows, there is nothing stopping you from staying at Windows. But I'd recommend you should try out Linux once to see how it will be.
Okay. Next, we have a question from Srinivas. Is there any chance of making contributions if you are beginner or intermediate level at the coding language?
As I just explained, if you're intermediate or beginner level and you think that and if you have a repository in front of you, you want to contribute to an open source project, and you think that I don't know how to add to this project, you should go through their issues. You'll see good first issues and simpler bugs that you may be able to fix, or you may be able to fix their documentation, through which you will be able to learn what the project is all about. Yes, I agree that with Srinivas, that beginners trying for contributing for open source projects don't know much. Last year, this was the case with me. You just need to keep on contributing to to open source, that you can get the gist of what it is all about. If you're contributing to an open source project, you'll be seeing how the project works. You'll see how the code is written, and from that you'll get an idea of how you can make the code better, or get a new feature that would be great for the code, or fix a bug that should be fixed as soon as possible.
Saksham, now Taksha has given a specification. He says that I am learning Ember.js and I wanted to contribute in Ember.js core. So library doesn't have enough documentation to start learning the core. So I wanted to contribute to Ember.js. So I need a mentor who can tell me what to do and what not to do.
So if there is not enough documentation according to you, first thing you should do is reach out to the community and ask them the stuff you don't understand about the project, or parts of the project you don't understand, and see if you can make better documentation as a starting point for you starting to contribute in that open source project. As I said, as a starting point, you can fix documentation, write documentation, and then later on you can go on to fix bigger issues and complex issues.
Okay. Aniket has a follow-up question. Earlier he asked whether he should choose Linux or Windows. Now he asks, if I select Linux, where should I start from?
So where should you start from, right? For if you want to start with Linux, there are a lot of tutorials on the internet that walk you through the process of how you should switch to Linux or any other operating system, any other operating system.
Okay, there is one more question from Astha. Uh, she says, as you said earlier, that Linux is better, but I heard that you have to do some extra stuff like some build in the command prompt for installing different softwares and all. So, will that be an issue for beginners?
Yes, that will be a small issue for beginners. So I recommend that you get a friend that already has experience in that, and with the help of them, you can start using Linux.
Saksham, we got a question from YouTube. He's asking, how did you start your contributions? Like, which was your first contribution to open source?
Yes, I can show you my first contribution in open source right here. It was a simple documentation one-liner fix, which helped me build confidence in and contributing to open source. This was my first contribution to open source. I just had
Saksham,
a
the slide is visible.
okay, wait. Is my slide visible? Is my presentation visible now?
So we
No,
can see can't.
no, Saksham, it is not visible. Now it is visible. And Taksh, I would request, please don't switch on your mic.
This was a simple pull request I made with only like 4 to 5 lines of changes in the documentation. This was my first pull request. This is how I got started with open source. Then Then I went on to solve bigger issues from slowly and slowly, and then I went on to uh, contribute to complex issues and solving complex issues and making complex pull requests.
I hope that answers your questions, Aniket and Yash. We have one more question. Do I have to change my stock Windows OS fully to Ubuntu to learn Linux?
Can you repeat that question?
Yes. Uh, Aniket is asking, I have to change my stock Windows OS fully to Ubuntu in order to learn Linux?
No, you can be doing dual boot, which is basically having two operating system on your machine, Ubuntu and Windows both, which is what I am doing right now. I am currently on my Linux system, and I can switch back to my Windows system whenever I want, and switch back to Linux whenever I want. You should look up dual booting.
We have another question. How can we find a mentor for the open source contributions for any project?
So basically, if you want for finding a mentor is not about like you want to find a mentor. If you're contributing to an open source project, you will have maintainers helping you, the project maintainers that initially created the project or have been maintaining the project for months and years, which will help you in contributing to the repository, and that is how you can grow as a developer. You don't It's not like you need a single mentor for all your tasks.
I hope that answers your query. We have another question from Astha. I have another doubt like in GSOC, how should we select the organization and the project? Like, should we go for an easy project where we'll have to compete with a lot, or should we go for a harder one where one will have to compete with lesser number of people?
That is completely on your preferences. If you want to go for a harder or a easier project, and it is not the competition everywhere. There is competition everywhere. So whichever project you choose, you just have to give your best to that project and hope that you get selected. You just have to give your best and write good code and build your confidence. For GSOC, you need a great proposal for that too, which requires great understanding for the repository which you're contributing to.
Okay. There is one more question. How to contribute to documentation? Does it require coding?
No, to contribute to documentation doesn't require coding. You just have to write lines explaining, which is what documentation is all about, explaining what the software does and how the software is doing the stuff it is doing. You don't need any experience in coding for that. Are
I
there any
think
other doubts?
no. I think the queries are solved and we are on time. So
Great. So thank you everyone. You can reach out to us for other more queries on our DSC MAIT Telegram group, that is bit.ly/tel-dscmait. You can also connect with me on LinkedIn and Twitter. And for other basic GSOC related doubts that you have, you can read my blog at medium.com at Sakshamaroda 1001. So thank you everyone for attending this session. And I wish you all the best of luck in this new open source journey you are about to embark into. And thank you, everyone.
thank you. Thank you.